I'm going to let Colin introduce our program tonight, and I'm going to step aside. Try not to get any chest hairs on this.
Joe, we ready? Okay. Well, it's our pleasure tonight to have Bob Wills from High Ridge, Missouri. It's in the St. Louis area. Talk to us tonight. Bob is a retired colonel from the U.S. Army. He's been very involved in COAD, a lot of work with MCOM, and a lot of work with just plain preparing for the future. I heard Bob talk a couple months ago, and I thought, boy, I want to see if I can get him up here to talk to us. And he wasn't about ready to drive up, but he said he would do a Zoom. So, Bob, if you want to tell us any more about your background or anything like that, please do. But welcome to the Great River Amateur Radio Club, and take it away, Bob. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, great to be here. See if I can get past the technological challenges and share my screen with you. Let's see here. Screen share.
I'm trying to.
Let's see, nothing's coming up. This is yeah, you can be prepared all you want, but as soon as you try to click on something, it doesn't want to play. Yeah, I spent many years in the Army, and the one thing that we always did was do a rehearsal or a practice before we started anything. So I have to bear with me a little bit since we didn't have a chance to practice. And here we go. Let's share.
All right. Are you seeing a presentation in front of you? So yeah, my name is Bob Wills. I spent 31 years in the Army. One of my passions has always been emergency communications, something I had the opportunity to do while I was in the Army. And had some real world experience taking care of communications for some incursions, Operation Just Cause, when we went to South America after Noriega, do some other comms in the sandbox in Saudi Arabia in areas that, well, they're still kind of a mess today. Some of the other things that I got to do was to do communications for Hurricane Hugo, Hurricane Iniki, and some others. So it's kind of, again, kind of a passion of mine. Somebody asked me, well, what makes you? You know what? It's a passion. I don't have a college degree in it. My mentor teaches at St. Louis University, and he's their emergency manager, and he's looked at everything that I came up with. Some of the stuff that I'm going to share with you is because I belong to Community Organizations Active in Disaster. That's the COAD. And St. Louis, and I'm sure Indianapolis, and in that whole area, it's got similar organizations. But St. Louis has a St. Louis Area Council of COADs. And as I attend those meetings, I listen to what a lot of people have to say, and I'm starting to see some themes. So for those of you who are, and I dare say, preppers, you can go to a voice of warning, a vow, and log into that, talk to my friend Chris. Yeah, he encourages his folks to buy 40 acres plus. They have tents that they get deals on that are good to -70. They're planning on creating tent villages in the hills, complete with solar power, cameras, guns, ammo, and completely off the grid. That's not what I'm going to talk about. I have a wife, XYL, and she put a stop to that a long time ago. But there are things that we can do. So I'm looking at personal, self-reliance and personal resiliency as part of what we do for an emergency. Now, if you can see the picture in front of you, that's a before and after picture, or actually after and before. This was Joplin, Missouri, about 3-4 years ago, when an F5 hit. And no matter how prepared they were, it was devastating. And again, my friend Ryan was down there, Professor Nichols, and he's pretty big on what you can do and other things like that. One of the disclaimers as you talk about emergency preparedness is you can't do nothing. Just because something is low frequency and high impact, for example, an F5 tornado, doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare or be prepared. Search, Indiana's got some really cool stuff too as far as severe weather safety and stuff goes. And I will put this in a PDF and I will send it to Colin and then he can send it out to the group. Although this does sound like scripture, if you are prepared, you shall not fear. And so realistically, that's what we can do is be prepared. But you still have to stand up. You got to do something, take one more step and put yourself out there starting. Again, my focus is going to be slightly different than some of you are used to. But in my area, these are the common disasters, and I think a lot of them are very similar to what you'd have in your areas. The interesting thing about St. Louis is you can have all of these in one day except forest fire and earthquake. And we may have many earthquakes, like MINI earthquakes constantly happening. And but yeah, I mean, you could wake up in the morning, be exceptionally hot, drought, and then by the time you go to bed, you've been through an ice storm, snowstorm, thunderstorm, tornadoes rip through, and you're flooding because what's left over. I mean, just it's absolutely interesting FEMA and SEMA, State Emergency Management Agency folks, is that these are actually, when you consider impact losses, these are almost always the same for every type of disaster. Water, a must. And I'm not going to read this to you. I'm sure you all know how to read. But I put it in this order specifically, and we'll kind of talk about when you get to this slide. Predictable is preventable in a sense. When you have a disaster, it gets back to what it said originally here, it could be inconvenient, discomfort, suffering, or could even result in death. So you have to be able to wrap your mind around kind of what's going to happen. And I don't know how interactive we can be, but hopefully we can be interactive. So I'm sure somebody out there, how long can you last without water? Anybody? Can we? I'm not hearing anything. Assuming that you guys can still hear me. But yeah, pardon? Perfect answer, yes. So when you look at this impact assessment, then 1 day, that's inconvenient. 2 days, discomfort. But once you get to that week, yeah, you're pretty much toast. Now, my friend, when I talk about storing some water, he always laughs and says he's got one of those filters. He'll go in and drink it from his pond. Yeah, nasty. Yeah, sure. But but we all think that way. And that's okay for long term. Food, honestly, I didn't know this till I looked it up and talked with a friend of mine who's a doctor. But you can literally go almost a month without eating as long as you've got water. It's not fun once you get past what do we call the hangries. Now, health and medicine, that's a whole nother story though. I mean, some of us have heart conditions, some of us have diabetes and we need our meds, some of us have other type of things going on. So that's something you kind of have to determine. Again, shelter, clothes, heating and cooling for extremes. Now, my kids would tell you without the internet, I mean, that's just like death. I mean, that's like, it's like catastrophic for 1 day, but kind of an exercise. But everybody can do something. So one of my favorite movies is called Zombieland. And if you have never seen Zombieland, it's ridiculous. But rule number 1 is cardio, cardio, cardio. And I bring that up because truly, and as sad as it sounds and as hard as it is, if you're out of shape and we have a real major disaster, you're going to be one of the first casualties. And so wherever you are, whatever state you're in, do a little more. If you have trouble walking, if you can't walk 2-3 miles, then start by walking a block. Start by doing something. Because if you think about it, if the roads are down, transportation is not available, and you have to evacuate, or even if it is available and you're going to have to carry your own stuff. And worst case scenario, you might have to move as fast as your body will take you away from the disaster. Or if a loved one's in trouble, you might have to run as fast as your body will take you towards that loved one if you think you have a chance of pulling them out of danger. So cardio has a cost, obviously a time cost, but it's not one of those things that's going to cost you a ton of money to do. Go bag. Everyone has an interesting thought about go bags. Hang on, please. My dog is driving me crazy. Thanks. Get my daughter to let the dogs out there being crazy. But again, the go bag is an interesting concept, and I don't typically go into a whole lot of detail teaching and about that because it's a really personal for everybody. Typically, basic rule is you need about 3 days of water, and it's about a gallon a day, and that's pretty heavy. And you need enough food to last for a couple of days. So, and of course, it can go all over the place with medicines, and we'll talk a bit more about that. Now, some of the basics too here. Know where to meet if you're separated. That's actually totally basic. Like, what does this have to do? Well, there's one way into my subdivision. If my subdivision is blocked, where would we meet? And so that's something that we plan as a family that we know. Who to call in emergency, that becomes kind of a critical thing too. One of the people that I work with says, oh, we will get everything up and running within 72 hours to, all the phones. And I said, yeah, well, it means we can call and do everything we need. Well, no, not necessarily. But a lot of times when the phones come back up, you can at least make an outbound call. So we all know that we're going to call Granny and we're going to check in with Granny. So that's kind of one of those things. Another one too is, and this is my one of my pets, I keep my car half full at all times. If you need to evacuate, you don't have to wait in line like a lot of people who are running around on empty. If it's wintertime and you're going to have to maybe have a very slow go drive home because they didn't take care of the roads. In St. Louis, yeah, they rarely are prepared for the storms. So there have been, friends of mine who've been stuck on the road for hours. Me? No. I watch the storm, and as soon as I see a snowflake's coming, I tell my boss, I'm going home, bye. And I go home and telework. So, but also, when gas prices are hitting $4 a gallon, it doesn't hurt as much if you're only filling your car at half tank. So that's a biggie. You might ask what preparedness has to do with getting out of debt. Well, this is back to being self-reliant, self-sufficient. Debt is a killer. And one of the things that's really tough is it's a mental thing when we're talking about being able to survive in a disaster, because you're going to have to come back. But you have more options when you're not basically underwater with financial issues. And any plan you have, if it's not something that you're able to share, that your family understands, your friends understand, your neighbors, that whoever you're working with, then again, we're talking about it has no value. You might drop a real fancy, Army used to do that. We drop a fancy operation order and nobody knew what was going on. So Russians used to say they hated fighting the Americans because they could steal our op order and prepare for it, but we never followed it. Now, safe words is kind of an interesting concept. This is a dual-hatted one. One is for those of us who are, we'll say conspiracy theorists, to be kind. We think differently. So in this particular case, a safe word might be, let's say you're in trouble and you're allowed to make a phone call, but you can't really talk. So I might say, hey, Jen, be sure to feed Luke. Well, Luke's been dead for 5 years, so they know that I'm in trouble. But another thing about safe words too, it's for example, in the Navy, they would train us, because I did Navy first before I go in the Army. In the Navy, they would say hit the deck, and they trained us that somebody ever said hit the deck, you immediately hit the deck. You didn't even think. And so this is one of those type things too, though. Again, likely scenario, probably not, but better prepared than not. You're sitting in your favorite restaurant. You, as the person who's prepared, your back is never towards the door, and you see something or somebody coming suspicious, perhaps they're armed, but you have already done your planning because you know every escape route, because that's the way we are. And you look at your family and there's no panic. You just say whatever your escape word is, code blue, Everybody quietly gets up and follows you out, and you're gone. So, yeah, is it critical? No, but it is something that does get taught when we talk about emergency preparedness. My pet peeve is this one here. Watch your surroundings. Put the phone down and pay attention. I was riding my bike in the park. Fenton's got some beautiful parks. Fenton is like a little suburb of St. Louis. And this guy is walking. He's walking with his wife, and they have two little kids, probably 4 years old. The parents are on their phone, zigzagging back on the bike path. They're not even walking in a straight line, and their little kids are wandering off in a completely other direction unsupervised. Put the phone down. In public, anyway. And a lot of times we just need to watch our surroundings. Not that the world is a horrible place, but things have got more dangerous in some cities. St. Louis, I don't know if it's still one of the murder capitals of the world, but there's about a 9 block by 9 block area that you don't go in just because, and you learn that. But again, watch what's happening around you. This is where I usually want to spend my time, right? This in the next slide or so. If you have a religious background and you believe in whatever your God may be, whatever your religious eschatology is, I would actually take that purple box that surrounds everything, and that would be you working on building on your faith or whatever you believe in. But most of us, okay, that's fine. But I'm going to put it more in terms that are things that we have more control over. And this will be a little repetitive. So your physical and emotional health, when you think about it, some of us have some really nice homes. It's that personal property thing. In an emergency, it could be gone. So some of our planning is some of our really important photos. They're in waterproof sealed boxes. Important documents are in waterproof and fireproof boxes, for example. Other things are ready to grab and go. But your physical health is important. Your emotional health is critical. So counsel with someone. I mean, a lot of times those of us who are really into emergency preparedness, we don't want to go anywhere near a psychologist. We'd end up in a straitjacket because of the things that we worry about or scenarios we plan for. But counsel with someone that you trust. It could be your family members, got a brother you're close to, friend you're close to, somebody. And of course, at the bottom, seek professional help if you need it. If you're really, really hurting emotionally, psychologically, seek the help you need. There's no stigma in that today like there used to be. But if you're just kind of normal, like the rest of us, okay, that sounds bad. If you're not going to go and seek that kind of, seek professional help, at least have somebody that you can counsel with, bounce ideas off and such things. And be able to talk to people, talk to your friends, and listen. And listen, on the listen part, it's kind of dual-edged as well. If someone gives you advice, like my wife, you need to get out of a vow and don't go crazy, Bob. Okay, dear, I will. But sometimes you need to be the person that they listen to, and you can help them talk, or help talk them down. If we're in some really strange times, but for preparedness, being able to keep your poise, being able to understand that things are going to happen and it's not going to be pleasant, and there is going to be basically discomfort and perhaps even some suffering, but ahead of time, and you can practice and plan for that. Sleep, we're not sleeping enough, eat right, exercise, and this is important, learn something new. Amateur radio operators, we can always learn something new. I mean, heavens, my subdivision won't let me put up antennas, so I crawl through attic spaces. That's fun. I actually learned something about a Wolf River coil and a buddy stick. So I can go into my backyard, throw up a buddy stick on 20 meters, connect my battery, basically a resonant antenna, connect my battery to my Yaesu 891, and I can sit there and I can go fishing, and I can talk to people from Maine to Miami to you name it. It's kind of fun. So I look at everything from an emergency perspective. Now, financial self-reliance, I kind of mentioned that, get out of debt, get out of debt, get out of debt. My friend actually told me this: set a goal, make a plan, set a date. He said he was heading to the subway in New York, and this guy who was begging pulled him aside and said, set a goal, make a plan, and set a date. I thought that was fascinating because maybe like coming from the source it came from. But realistically, if you can create a budget, do it, eliminate debt, understand the difference between needs and wants. And that's what hurts a lot of people, a lot of Americans today. I got a young friend that she gets paid on Friday. Saturday, she goes to the spa and she gets a pedicure and a manicure, her hair done, her eyebrows done. She goes to the tat parlor and gets a little more added to her tat, and then she takes herself out to a nice dinner. But Monday, she can't pay her insurance and her water bill. Okay, so do a needs assessment, and this is a hard thing to do if you've never done it before. Look at the money coming in and where it's going. It will make you cry the first time you do it, but it's part of getting out of debt. I mean, my wife and I realized when we had a kid we were going to send to college that we needed to get out of debt, and it was a sacrifice. We planned. We didn't go on any vacations. I stopped at the store on the way home from work, and we limited stuff, and we sacrificed really hard for 3 years. We set a goal, made a plan, and we set a date. And since then, all our cars are paid off, house is paid off. We got some money in the bank. So start if you're strapped with debt, start and try to get out of it, and then try to live within your means. Again, that's part of all this preparedness piece. Now, the middle piece here is just common. This is what you're going to find on the websites. And the piece where it says emergency preparedness, this is some of the stuff that I learned from the COADs. We found that we had about 200 houses that flooded, and out of those 200 houses, probably 90% of those folks had no flood insurance. So insurance is tough, but it's kind of a necessity depending on where you live and what you can afford. Savings, back to getting out of debt. And remember your pets. You need to plan for your pets in an emergency as well. Anytime you're faced with anything, you're going to either shelter in place, you're evacuate. Immediate response, we typically talk about somebody's having a heart attack, you know where the AED is, you know how to do CPR, you know how to stop bleeding, the ABCs, airway, bleeding, circulation. Or immediate response means you've heard the sirens go off, tornadoes coming, you know where to go. If you don't have a basement, you still know where to go. A lot of little things like that. Long-term response, that's the cleanup. That's when you get back, and that's tough. And then there's us, communications and the community. And that's something that we practice. I know that you do too. We have stations at most of the major hospitals that some of us take care of. I have 2 emergency operations centers that I go and work at. So one EOC is 15 minutes away, and the other one that's actually mine is about 40 minutes away. So kind of is what it is. So this is the basis. We have to be emotionally sound and thinking about it without worrying about it. But something's going to happen at some point in time. So how we do that, got to accept your own mortality. Nobody wants to really accept that. I mean, I'm turning 66, and you know what? I'm not as young as I used to be when I was climbing up the ladder the other day. Ouch. But there's very simple things that you can do, and I don't know where you exactly live. All of you probably live slightly different area. But in St. Louis, we are in this Missouri, we have something called transfer on death. So when you register your car, you get a TOD set up. My friend Mary passed, didn't get a TOD. The car sat. It has to go in probate, and her family could have used the car or even the money. So TOD, it doesn't mean you're gonna die, but in an emergency, any of those other emergencies that we talked about, that's kind of important. Having a will is important too, because it will basically let your will be known to your, if something does happen to you. So it can cut down on some of the, and unfortunately, a death in the family can make kids go at each other's throat, especially if nothing's been set aside in a will or spelled out. It's sad. Get out of debt. You've heard me harp already. insurance, again, life insurance, health insurance, and insurance on your personal properties. That's something that you care about anyway. The other piece here, what if you're just incapacitated? What does this have to do with emergency preparedness? Well, disaster hits, you manage to get out, or they manage to get you out. Maybe you're unconscious or something, but you don't have a power of attorney. Nobody can make decisions for you. So there's different types, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to go into all of those. But there are some that have to do with your medical, some that have to do with your health decisions, and general powers of attorney. So that was one of the things that I would always suggest: get your will, get insurance, get your power of attorney set up, and then this may sound as really, really simple, but do you know where your important papers are? So when I talk this, about the only thing I tell people to buy or suggest they buy is a waterproof, fireproof box. And you don't have to have all of these things, but you might have these things, especially just like wills, power of attorney, birth certificates, marriage licenses, perhaps, titles, just kind of those kind of things that if something happens when you need to rebuild, you actually have the documentation that you need to rebuild. So I keep mine in that box, and then they're inside of an envelope. So if I, and it's not in plain sight, but it's in plain sight to me because I know where it is. I can just walk downstairs, grab the envelope, and go. I'm not going to take the whole fireproof box with me when I go, but again, I do have it kind of set up that way. Home inventory, maybe you have some really nice stuff, you want to do that. And again, a lot of it's thought process. If you live in an area where it floods a lot, you might, if you keep things in a basement, put them in waterproof containers. It's all a matter of kind of, I don't want to say catastrophizing. My kids say I catastrophize all the time. But it's looking at worst case scenarios and trying to find a balance between what you can afford and what you want to salvage, if you will, if something does happen. Medications are kind of a different thing nowadays. We used to be able to get, buy a box of Sudafed and throw it in our Go kits and other things. Not so much anymore. Most docs are pretty strict on you get the exact amount of pills. So what we usually suggest you do is that all your meds you put in a spot that you can grab. The story I usually tell is that in 1842, my ancestors finally irritated enough people that they were asked to leave at gunpoint from England. They were Scottish, and they were not happy that the Brits had stolen their land and their culture and everything else. And they opened their mouth one time too many. So as those of you who are Hoosiers and stuff like that, hey, most of my family was from eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. So visiting some relatives, I park at the crossroads and I wait for them to come get me so that I don't get shot on my way up there. So you can imagine. But my family was given 15 minutes to grab everything they could grab and go. And so I kind of use that as a measuring stick. If you had 15 minutes to get out of your house, what would you take with you? What could you take with you? So know where your meds are so you don't have to think. Know where important papers are so you don't have to think. And that starts to bring up towards the emergency planning. And some of it is just really simple. Do you know how to get out of a place? I go to a church and we teach little kids, and I will talk to the teachers and say, hey, if there's a fire, do you know how to get the kids out? Do the parents know where to pick their kids up when things are helter-skelter? And for us even, do we know how to evacuate? Do we know where we're going to meet if we have to evacuate? So little things like that are pretty important. And I already kind of mentioned this, know where to meet in your, outside your home, your neighborhood, your community, different things like that. And now, to a lot of you, this is the near and dear part. One of the things that FEMA has asked us to do is to be able to shelter in place for about 4 days. And what they figure, if we can have enough water and enough food and such, batteries for our flashlights, different things like that, that if we can give them about 4 days, they can clear roads, they can get communications going, they can get power going. So at least in our area, they want us to, and we say shelter in place. I mean, doesn't mean you stay in your house like for COVID. It means, you're not on the road. So I'm going to go across the street and make sure, John and his wife are fine. I mean, he's 83. I'm going to check on Tony next door, and I'm going to check on Savon and James. And as a neighborhood, we're going to, the power's out. We're going to have one heck of a fun barbecue for at least to see what's going on, but we're not going to get on the highway. We're going to shelter in place for 96 hours. So what that looks like for me is I have 3 people in my family that are home, and I have 3 cases. Our go bag. I mean, come on. Hey, we need you to go to the EOC. Boom, we got our stuff to grab and go. Again, it's really personal. Everyone has different needs, different wants, different things that they're going to want in it. But at the end of the day, you still need water, you still need food, you still need your meds and stuff like that. Lots and lots of help on the online sites. Again, ready.gov, FEMA.gov. So as I conclude this thing, I still, even in recovery phase, cardio. I'm not in the greatest shape, not like I once was, but every day I walk a couple miles and I just make a plan and work out and do different things like that. So to conclude, it's very personal, but what you need to do, or what we can do, what we want to do is we want to prepare ourselves for as much as we can in a common sense way, back to getting your transfer on deaths, your will, getting your power of attorney, knowing where your important papers are, and being able to shelter in place first. And then for your go bag stuff, knock yourself out. Have fun with it. Whatever you think, I did an emergency preparedness exercise for my church group, and sent out an emergency message to 10 congregations, about 2,500 people, and the message was 15 minutes, grab all you can grab and go to this park and have a cookout. And everybody had a lot of fun with it, but it kind of let them know that, if you didn't know where certain things were, that maybe you needed to make a plan and do a little preparation. But I appreciate you letting me chat with you. And if we can figure out how to do questions and answers, I'll do my best. Like I said, I have a passion on it. I'm by no means an expert, and I would suspect that some of the folks sitting in the room are well advanced from the kind of stuff that I'm doing. But it was a pleasure talking to you anyway. Yeah, I heard the question. That to me is also something kind of personal. One of the reasons that I don't tell people to do safety deposit boxes is because your bank could be hit as well. So if depending on whether it's flood, tornado, or whatever, but some of it also just depends. You might. I have stuff in a safety deposit box. But some of my more important papers I keep handy so that I could grab and go just in case there's something that hits the bank as well. Let's see. I am a aficionado of this kind of stuff. So this is pure speculation, pure opinion. If I'm thinking about weapons that I might need a weapon, first you got to think about where you're going to go. If you're going to go to a shelter, may not be a great idea. Mine are going to stay trigger locked in my safe, and I'm just going to hope they're there when I get back. But if I were going in a different type of environment, I have a takedown 22 and a small 22 revolver with about 400 rounds of ammo that I can grab from my go bag. A 22 you can hunt with. At the very, very worst case, a 22 can be used for self-defense. When you start talking about 38s, 357s, 9 mils, 45s, all my favorite calibers, you know, I don't know. I read a book by Robert Heinlein years ago, and the main character was not for firearms, because once you shoot that box of 50 ammo that weighs 4 pounds, you got a paperweight. So he always suggested a couple of knives, and so I always have in my go bag several different types of knives that can be used for cutting, whittling, depending on what I might have to do when and where. But a lot of that's personal choice and preference. Some of us live in states like Missouri where it's not uncommon to see somebody with a nice blade hanging off one hip and a 45 strapped on the other. But some states are getting to the point where if you say the word gun, you're going to go away in handcuffs. So not that really answers your question, but a lot of it thinks if you got to move fast and you got to go, I would go light with a light caliber. And I say this in jest, but there are going to be times where a 22 is sufficient, and if you need something else, you're going to be able to get it. That's what. Well, anything else? All right. Well, Colin. I didn't hear that one. I'm sorry. That's true. In fact, I live on a hilltop. Stop. I live on a hilltop, and it's probably the second highest hilltop in Missouri. If I'm flooded, I'm pretty much Noah's Ark. So to kind of think about it, typically I would tell people that there's two kinds of ways to think about, the self-reliance and preparedness piece. One is more the checklist mentality. In other words, you're going to have your buckets of food and you're going to live off your buckets of food. Last time I taught this, there was a pediatric nurse in the audience, and she's like, kids will starve before they'll eat something they're not used to eating. So if you're having food storage, so being self-reliant means, maybe you learn how to buy one of those soup can dispensers where you put one in the top and it rolls down to the bottom, and you take the oldest one first and you rotate through your supplies and things like that. But it really kind of depends. Most of the time, you're going to shelter in. Which direction is it going to go? I mean, we were, 2018, tornado was heading right towards us, and we were down in the basement all huddled up, and it skipped our neighborhood. In fact, it made about a 4-mile skip and came down in Sunset Hills and whacked the neighborhood pretty hard. So if you live in Florida, for example, and hurricane, whatever the next one is coming up, I don't know. There's another one. But if a hurricane's coming and you kind of know the path of the hurricane, then maybe you can board your place up. You've kept your car at half tank. You've got your go bag, and you head in the opposite direction that the hurricane's coming. Fire, forest fire, again, that's another one of those deals where you're going to have to evacuate, and you're probably going to follow law enforcement or first responders instructions more than you're going to make a choice, and they're probably not going to let you stay at home. So for me, I'm prepared to stay in place for 96 hours, just knowing what happens in my area, and that's what's important. What happens in my area is different from what happens in yours. I'm going to get a freak ice storm, and I live on a hill, and you're not getting up my hill. And I'm not getting down my hill without, I'm just not. It just isn't going to happen. So I can live in my house if the power goes out. I have plenty of ways to take care of myself, wood for the fireplace and 3 or 4 cases of, I always keep about 10 cases of water on hand anyway. But if I have to evacuate, then something really bad is coming. So that's what you need to know as you sit down is, what are the potential disasters or potential events for them? And probably 90% are going to be shelter in place. Great. Sure. I'm on QRZ, so my call sign is Whiskey Bravo 0 Romeo Echo Whiskey, WB0 REW. Yeah, feel free to reach out. If I don't know the answer, I've got some friends that are really into it that can help you out. Roger that. Maybe I'll hear you guys on the airwaves. And those of you that just got your license, it's a fantastic hobby, and you can actually be a great public service. So get out there and have fun.
In that. We racked up 563 contact single sideband and 29 CW. Dan was the CW. And Dan, this guy wanted a QSL card. I've sent it to him. This is the kind of card that he got. And Dan, for your, I'll give you a copy of this so you can see what other places did. But Dan gets a nice certificate recognizing his participation. Hang it up on the wall. So thank you, Dan. I don't know if we'll participate next year or not. If we are, we've got to have greater commitment than we had this year. Dan and I had to carry the load, and it was just too much for two of us. The second thing, Symphony Orchestra wants our help. There's a thing called Arts Trek. There's 2 dates. I think one is, Dan, maybe you can get ready to, if we have volunteers, write this down. They have about a 40-minute concert. The concerts are really interesting. They're going to hear the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra, but they're going to learn about music and a lot of things like that. So we need volunteers because we have to, the buses come in and they're around the Five Flags, not the events, but the whatever it's called. It's also called the theater, I guess. Yeah. The buses come in on 4 sides, and we need people to kind of supervise them getting off the buses. But more importantly, when the kids come out, we need somebody on each street and say, bus number 2, you can go up and pick up your students. Otherwise, they don't know, and it's chaos with all these buses pulling up and being picked up. So we needed volunteers for that.
What time does it start?
9 a.m., I think.
That's on the third.
Is it Thursday?
Lunch comes to.
Sorry.
The other one is November 2nd.
Are those the dates?
Yep.
Okay. Those are the dates. So, you know, you're not going to be involved. You'll be involved during the morning, and then by, I think, 1 o'clock, you're through. But it'll be a great help to the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra. Hannah von Mullert is the one that reached out to us. Her husband is a member of the club, and so that's where we got into this. So who at this point can volunteer? Dan, okay, we've got Joe, Pat.
12th of October and 2nd of November. Both of Thursdays.
Okay, Dave, for the first one. Let's see, that's Gregory back there. It works sometimes. So Gregory, Fred, yeah, Fred's already volunteered. If you don't volunteer, I'm going to come and buttonhole you. So that's the way it goes. What do we got?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
You got me?
7.
7, okay. I think we've got it. If we need more or something, I'll let you know. But I appreciate those. They're going to volunteer, and we'll get details out to you at our next Aries meeting, which will be the first Monday of October. We'll talk some more about that. Now, that's the Aries members, but there'll be sufficient emails that get out there. And do some testing, see how well we can communicate around that block and that downtown place. But we're thinking simplex. Okay?
Downtown repeaters got that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ones happening too.
Huh?
You want to tie up a repeater for that?
Well, that's the question. Do we want to tie up a repeater for that? Well, we'll look at that too, the downtown link. Yeah, so,
It's just that it's on all buildings.
right, okay. Fred?
I think it's a good idea to test some of the tactical. You only have a block or so there, you set it from there.
Right,
Watch.
right. I will have we'll have for you, all of you, a bright yellow vest to wear so that people kind of know who you are and they're not going to drive over you or something.
It's nice to be able to let you know that it's coordinated from inside.
Yeah.
When the event is done, whoever's inside, whether they calling me or somebody else, is notified. They get on their radio, just start talking to people around the building. So it's a good operation. Yeah, it's very simple.
Yeah, it'll be a good exercise. Fred?
So the first thing you want to test is when you're inside, is
Right.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too. So, all right. Anything else? Dan, anything else?
Not for you. Ed has something to say.
You can only have this if you got hair on your chest, you know. This is an old joke from last week or last month. You may
We had my announcement at the beginning.
okay about the testing.
Oh, okay. Basically, the October testing cycle will be 1 week later. The 12th was 14th. 14th will be our testing. That's 9 o'clock at Red Cross. So anybody wanting to upgrade their license or start out all over again, give me a call and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Oh, you never gave a financial report. Okay, the financial report for the month, we have in the checking account $4,188. Joe did a special activity. Did you want this mentioned or not?
Go for it.
All right. Anyway, he's got, because of his actions, he's going to be putting in $60 from his volunteer work. And there will be a check to me for $175 for the storage cabinet that we have. Might look back there and you can see the storage cabinet that we have for storing equipment. And then there's another $20 that will reimburse to me too for getting insurance for our downtown repeater. Okay, so the Springbrook account has $843.10, and our savings is $2,362.37. So, any questions? Okay, we're still going to have dues next year of $35, but we got some things coming up that we want to do, and we'll be talking about how we're going to use a little bit of this money. Joe?
So for those of you still in the workforce, if your company is tied or works at all with Benevini causes, the Great River Amateur Radio Club is a listed cause on there now. That's where that 60 came from.
That was great of you, Joe. Thank you. About this fellow over here trying to hide out. I know you have something to say.
Actually, I got two things. Well, I figured Colin talked long enough. I gotta see if I'll help him. So we're making a little change for the next club meeting. As far as signing goes, we have put together the club list, and of course, now that Dan called me up here, I'm not ready for it. So instead of using everyone come in, writing your information down every time that you come to a meeting, we kind of already know it for the most part. So we're going to set up this by the door. So you'll be able to just pick your name and sign in. You no longer have to write everything in. There is a button that allows for people that do not have a license yet, are new, or just not club members and haven't been here before. Yes, this will also go over to anyone that is watching online through the stream. You'll be able to go to the website and check yourself into the club meeting. So we're going to start next month. We're going to try it out, have it ready for next month. I know Karen and Sheila will be online, so I will send them an email of the link of where they go to sign in. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick, let me change the view here, is club members that run nets. We've had a lot of issues in the past with people having old lists and calling old lists, or lists that aren't particularly in the order that you're used to for that net. So what I've worked on is I've gotten a list of different nets from Ed, from Colin, Gary. I just listened and put together because he didn't give me a list actually. Not to call you out, but so we put together these lists already for each individual net. So now on the club website, you see there's a button up here. If Gary's not available and he needs someone to run the net, it will automatically generate the net list if you don't want to do it through the website. The website does have the ability for people that don't want to write it down and just want to hit a button. If we were to say right now, start the club net, it will keep track of check-ins. We don't have we had a discussion about this. We don't have a definitive answer of timeouts, but the idea is we're trying to make the net more efficient and not call 15 people that don't usually answer. So we're going to work on, I know Gary said he wants a month. Colin, it's a little different. Sunday night net is once a week, so it may be 2 months. But basically, if people aren't checking in, it's going to kind of automatically shorten that list for them.
When you're running this online, does it have the capability to show whether or not a specific station has traffic within it?
Glad you asked. I'll show you why. Okay, so let me change. I'm gonna do the other net because this one. No. Anyway, I'm still working bugs out. But you have 3 buttons as options. You have traffic, no traffic, and nothing heard. At the end, you saw there was a button that said round 2. That will only show you people that had traffic. So, yeah.
Is it a public facing page? You have to log in.
No, it is not a public facing page. You have to be a member and you have to have net control rights. Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that, but yeah.
Joey's standing up there looking at all these smiling faces. All right. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Have I forgotten anything?
Yeah, I would like to add something. I'm hopefully going to do a lecture on Tesla coils. And if I
can't get them to work, I'll do a tutorial on my ham shack in Dubuque, because as of now, if I do a lecture on Tesla coils, it would be how they don't work. And I'm pretty sure you'd be more interested in them working than not working.
That'd be a good bit, yeah.
Okay?
All right. All righty then. Anybody else? Somebody's got, oh, Robert, what's up?
Be quick. I was gonna demo this tonight, but unfortunately I grabbed the wrong phone, so I can't demo it. Got too many phones apparently. Colin, I don't need hair on my chest because I got hair in my head, so that'll trump that. So, all right. So I'm not feeling too good tonight. I think I got a little food poisoning, but I'll try to do my best real quick here. So we always talk about trying to get new people interested in the club and trying to get people to join the club and do some activities with the club. So what I thought was we could do a fox hunt. Traditionally, we've always had somebody like Colin in a vehicle, reading out of a book, for a few minutes and then stopping. Reading out of a book for a few minutes and stopping. But this is all electronic. It'll transmit Morse code for 30 seconds and then be quiet for a minute to a minute and a half. And then, of course, transmit again. My thought was with fox hunting, you can get anybody to join because with fox hunting, you're not transmitting, you're only receiving. So the cool thing is we can get other people involved, like Boy Scouts or even just people at school or friends or family who are interested in radio and really don't understand it very well. And then, of course, left my cell phone there. But we can also use our cell phones for some geocaching. So my thought was we could have a couple of geocaches set up, and we use the cell phones to find those geocaches. First geocache could say, would have the location of the second geocache, and then maybe like some information like the frequency that we're going to be using the fox hunt on, or the transmitter on. Then the second geocache would give you a location to start to actually start looking for the fox, right? Because obviously we're going to have a transmitter that's not going to put out a real huge signal to cover like half the town. We want a real small signal. So the second geocache would give you the location, so then you get the location, and then you would start from there. And then instead of just having like everybody all at once running to these places and do stuff, break it up into small teams of 3 to 5 people, depending on how many people you get to join. This way you got somebody, keeping track of stuff on paper. You got somebody running the antennas, whatever. Somebody driving the vehicle. And this way, what we can do is, draw cards or whatever. This group leads first, this group leads second, this group leads third. So if you had, like, say, 5 groups, 6 groups, you'd leave it in different intervals. And then what you would be able to do is everybody would have a chance to find the fox. A lot of times with one fox and everybody's out looking around, then all of a sudden Robert finds the fox, and then guess what? Everybody's all bummed out and disappointed because they don't get a chance to find the fox. This way, everybody that participates gets an opportunity to find the fox. And then maybe, at the end of the day or something, we all meet back up and we have like a potluck or something, or a barbecue or something, and just kind of hang out and BS and just, talk about the different stuff that we did or whatever, you know what I mean? So, yep, so. Just a thought, run it by the club quick. I have a prototype built. If anybody wants to maybe play with it on the weekends with me and just practice and get some ideas, and we can come up with some rules, and then, eventually have something where we can, as a club, try it first, kind of go through it, and then after that, the second time we do it as a group, we can invite friends and family, church members, nephews, nieces, whatever. So, all right. Thank you. You can, oh, yeah. You got hair in your head?
Thank you, Robert. I thought I saw another hand go up. Kelly, did you have your hand up? Okay. Did you, Colin, have your hand up?
Well, people should look back there and see the cabinet we have now for storage.
Okay. There's a cabinet, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little lost, but, so you want everybody to go back there and look at that cabinet? Okay, does everybody know where the cabinet is? Okay, it's straight back, practically straight back through there, isn't it? Back out through the door, straight back to the wall, can't miss it. Alrighty, Is any, Colin?
I make a motion that we cease and desist.
Anybody want a second? Okay, second. Okay. Hey, thanks everybody for showing up. It's really great.